I paid how much for this? Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. So today we are talking about a question that I get asked sometimes. People ask me, David, you've been living in Italy for over 10 years. Don't you miss anything from the United States? I do, in fact. All right, so the first one is the metric system, or better yet, not using a metric system. I understand it, more or less. But the point is that, I grew up in the United States. I spent the first 30 years of my life there. And our system, the imperial system, is still the first thing that comes to mind after all these years. Like whenever I think about my weight, my height, and especially the temperature, that's the first thing I think of. But even today, I still have a little bit of difficulty when I deal with a metric system. For example, if I'm asking for directions and somebody tells me that a location is about 600 meters down that way, I ask them, can you give me a landmark? The same thing when I'm in my car. When I'm driving, I've actually stopped looking at the speedometer because when I see 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers, I have an idea what that is in miles, but still, it doesn't mean much to me. Next, we have the Christmas decorations. And this is something that I really missed this past year thanks to this COVID situation. I didn't go to America, and so I kind of missed out on my chance to see Clark Griswold lighting up the whole neighborhood. But anyway, people say that we Americans go overboard when it comes to Christmas decorations. Do we? Absolutely. But that's kind of what makes Christmas special in the United States, at least for me. Here's something in particular that I miss seeing every year. Check it out. The next one hits close to home, and that is the American homes. And now that I have a family of my own, I think back to the house that I grew up in, and honestly, I miss it. And I think my daughter I think she would like a place like that if we were to live there again. There are a few things that I miss about American homes. One, they're just bigger than most Italian homes, let's face it. But also the fact that they're made of wood. And because of that, whenever I see wooden furniture or wooden home, and just wood in general, I have this home feeling. And yeah, that's just how I grew up. It's no surprise that most Americans live in single-family homes and a small percentage live in apartments. In Italy, it's quite the opposite. I think the idea of being separated from your neighbors, it kind of reflects the idea of autonomy. So when you are physically separated from the people around you, you do feel more independent and autonomous. And when you look at the American houses, or at least the ones that I'm used to, you can see this concept. I suppose some people might see that as something that's sad. You're separated from your neighbors. Who do you talk to? Isn't it lonely? That depends on your perspective. Some people are used to it, some people are not. Me personally, I like being at a comfortable distance between myself and my neighbors and not having to hear them. Oh, something else that I miss from American homes are fly screens. They're here in Italy. We have one in my apartment, but for some reason, they just haven't caught on like they have in the United States. And I've never quite understood that. Although somebody did tell me once that if you were to install a fly screen in the window, not enough air is able to get into the apartment or house. I disagree with that, really. We grew up with fly screens, and I never felt suffocated because we had them. If anything, I miss them for what they were designed to do, to keep out the flies, because when you're in a deep sleep in the summertime and you hear a buzz in your ear, oh, that's irritating. One more thing that I want to mention on houses. I'm from New England, Connecticut. And we have a lot of beautiful colonial homes, and this is something that I really miss and took for granted while I was living there. But yeah, we have some of the oldest houses in the country, and it's just fascinating how a lot of them are still standing. People actually live in them today, and it's just like observing living history. Next, we have the roads, and this is something that I dearly miss. Now, granted, I live in Rome. The roads are what they are. The traffic is chaotic. But still, if you think about American roads in general, I miss them because they're bigger and they're wider. And that makes sense, really. We live in a bigger country and we have more space to build these roads. Cracks happen, potholes happen. Italy and America are no exceptions. But what I do miss from the United States is the fact that I think that they're maintained a bit better. When potholes happen, you've got to put up with them for a while, but eventually they get fixed. Whereas here in Rome, they get fixed, but they get fixed when they get fixed. Next, we have the parking. And one of the things that I miss the most from living in the United States and in regards to parking is that when I went out and did my errands, I didn't plan my day according to if there's parking. Because in the United States, usually, at least where I'm from, there's always parking. And if the lot was full, well, at least there was a parking lot. Whereas here, if I have to go and do something simple, like a doctor's visit, the grocery store, or whatever, I think twice about driving there because where are you going to park? Next is English. I've mentioned this in a previous video, but I'll say it again. I do miss my native language. Granted, it's English. It's not some obscure language which is hard to come by. You know, it's a global language. But I still miss it nonetheless. Honestly, I can say that what I miss the most is just being around it, really. Just hearing it all around me, not thinking about it, and just not feeling like a foreigner because of the language. I miss being in that mental state where, you're surrounded by your native language and no thinking required. It gives your brain the opportunity to relax. Now, don't get me wrong, it's been a life-changing experience learning Italian, and in a positive way. Learning two languages, it really does enrich yourself, it enriches your soul. I also think it keeps your brain sharp as you get older. I think what I've missed most about American English is the fact that your first language, in my opinion, is really connected to your identity. How you express yourself, how you're able to interact with people, and just express yourself to the world is very important. And when you can't do that, it's like a part of you just doesn't exist. Now, I'm not saying that part of me doesn't exist, really, but let's just say that there are times where, I would prefer my native language as opposed to have to think twice about how to say something. Granted, I feel a lot more confident than I did 11 years ago, but even still, Italian will always be my second language, and so there will always be situations where I don't fully feel confident. How do you say that? Oh, geez, I don't remember. E vabbè, andiamo avanti. All right, so now let's talk about food. And you might be thinking, David, how can you possibly miss American food when you're in Italy, when you have all this great food around you? But I do, in fact. Well, as you saw in the intro, let's talk about peanut butter. And yeah, that's something that I miss. And I've really got to find somewhere else to buy it because I pay about €6 for a dinky little container like this. The other one that I want to mention is cereal. And if you take a look at these two pictures here, there's no comparison. If you go to a supermarket in the United States, you clearly have a much wider variety of cereal choices as you do here in Italy. That's something else that I miss from the United States, supermarkets. They're bigger and there's more choice. But granted, everything else is bigger in the United States, so who's surprised? The next one is a bit complex, and I'm just going to give you my interpretation of this idea. And that is the idea of individualism. Also individualism and entrepreneurship. There are different nuances to this concept, but my interpretation is simply this. In my opinion, in the United States, there's a culture which promotes autonomy. In other words, we encourage you to be a self-made person. In other words, to go out there, to find your way in life, to get the perfect job, and just be successful on your own terms. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that in the USA, our friends and family don't help us. Far from it. But really, it's a huge country, and it just depends on the family. There are some people who are completely autonomous, and there's some people who they really do need their family to survive. So it depends. I did mention the idea of entrepreneurship. I think that's a pronunciation. It's a concept that I miss from the United States because the USA has produced some of the greatest inventors and inventions, and yeah, a part of me misses that. The last two that I want to talk about fall under the entertainment category, and the first one are rock and metal concerts. I went to plenty of them before I moved here, and not going to them as often as I used to, I really do miss them. I went to one about 2.5 years ago, and it was very weird. Just for 2 hours, it really did feel like I was back in the United States. Something in particular that I miss from Connecticut are bonfires. And these are cool because you can do these in the summertime or also the wintertime. It was just very relaxing and simple, just to get together with a bunch of friends, build a bonfire, sit around, and just drink a few beers. I have seen bonfires here in Italy, but they're mostly on the beach. Something that I used to do very often is go and play pool. Many nights, me and my best friend would go to a pool hall, go there, play pool, have a few beers, chit-chat, listen to rock music, maybe watch a baseball or a hockey game on TV. I know that sounds very American, but what do you want? That's where I'm from. Oh yes, I do experience reverse culture shock when I go back and visit the United States, but that's for another video. To be perfectly honest, I never really thought that I would miss much from the United States. Like I said, when I first moved here, I was so gung-ho about everything being Italy in my life, culture, language, everything really. But The more often I went back to visit my family and friends, the more I began to realize that, there are certain things that I miss. And I think that also happens with age, in the sense that nostalgia takes over. Question: do you live abroad? Have you ever lived abroad? And have you ever really missed things from your hometown, home country? Leave me a comment below. I'd be curious to know. If by any chance you happen to enjoy today's video, make sure you hit the like button because this does help out my channel in the YouTube algorithm. And also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do that. I make channels about Italy, but more specifically, I cover practical tips for living here, working here, vacationing, and also I make videos for anybody that just has a passion for Italian culture. Grazie mille per l'attenzione. Ci vediamo alla prossima. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.